Oh, yeah. Okay, now you should be good. All right, guys, welcome. Impromptu fireside chat. Welcome all. Smash the like button. You know the deal. I see a lot of regular faces, a couple new ones coming in too. So Troy and I were talking. He's got a new course coming out in charisma and that. I don't know anything about it, but I've seen how he does his work. So I thought, why not take an hour and chat about that? But then while we're at it, some value for you guys outside of that, talking about charisma and just general. And he showed me some funny stuff about the seedy side of London. So we're going to talk a little bit about, I think, the grungy aspect of charisma specifically. So it's going to be pretty cool. One of you guys suggested that we do like a impromptu Q&A while we wait for him. So I thought, what the hey, why not? Here's how we'll organize it in. Straightforward. Super chats get priority. Other than that, I'll pick out interesting questions if there's too many to deal with. Otherwise, I'll hit them up one at a time here. May not be the answer you want, but it's going to be the answer you probably need. Oh. Tough luck, boys. Okay, Troy, I'm bringing you in. We're going live. There we go. Hey, man, can you hear me all right? Can I hear you? Hello? All right, here, one sec. We'll fix his sound. Better? Oh, you know what this is? He can't hear me. I can't hear him. I guess we do have some time for questions after all. Can you hear me yet?
Yes, I can. Yes.
Oh, there we go. Oh, wow. There's a bit of a delay on that one.
Can you hear me?
All right. Yeah, I can hear you just fine. We were going to do a little bit of a Q&A with the guys. So what the hey, we're just, oh, that's why my speakers are set up so they don't listen through the microphone. This is such professionalism, guys. I'm not going to lie to you. You should really pay attention, take some notes.
World class, world class. It's good to see you, man. How's things?
Things are great, but I hear things are better for you. I'll do a couple things here just so everybody knows. So just so you know, Troy offered me an affiliate link for this one. I don't want it. I just want to hear more about it. I'm pretty curious. We spent a bunch of time in John's webinars, and it's amazing the work you did in there. So if it's even half as good as that, I'm sure it'll be fine. But I guess you just got back from doing an hour with Rich, right?
Yes, I was just chatting to Rich over on my channel, actually. We had a really good chat about business and entrepreneurialism, which was really cool because I've never had Rich on before. And I mean, he's obviously got just such a wealth of experience in that area that it was really interesting to, to get into the weeds on that kind of stuff. Absolutely, man. Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, so Charisma and Dating Academy, my flagship elite world-class dating and charisma course is live now, and yeah, it's been going really well so far. Actually, I have to say, I'm really sort of heartened by the response so far. There's been a lot of sign-ups. There's been some good feedback, even though we're only a day into it. People are still going into the course now. They're looking at the material. They seem to be liking it. They seem to be getting value from it. So yeah, man, it's all really good. It's all going. It's been exciting. It's been quite hard work actually over the launch period, but yeah, man, it's all good. So yeah, it's good to come on here and have a chat and chew the fat by the fireside, so to speak.
I don't know why I like that. This originally was going to be called Lloyd's Coffee House. I think you might get the reference, but
yes.
Yeah.
Yes, well, I sent you that picture, didn't I? When I actually walked past the Lloyds Coffee House in London.
I just noticed that you had that Siemens Wharf thing, and I thought you were just gonna you were just throwing shit at me.
Yes, I should have that as my profile picture or something. So basically, down the road from where I am at the moment, so I'm in East London right now, and down the road there's an area called Limehouse, which is, I suppose, one of the old port type areas in London where the ships used to come in when they were obviously bringing like goods and things from the Far East and everything into London, and it was a seafaring area. And so it's sort of it's always had this slightly seedy sort of reputation, slightly seedy side to it. But yeah, just down the road, there's this like thing called the Seaman's Rest, which I thought was quite comical for obvious reasons. And also, yeah, you know,
oh yeah, the plaque for where it was. That's awesome. That's too funny.
Yeah.
And that was something that you brought up. I thought we should talk about, like seedier side of things with charisma, and that one hit me hard because I hate pretentiousness. Since coming to Toronto, they have a bit of that, like the Britain 2.0 thing where everybody's nice to be nice and posh, and I'm walking in like a West Coaster. The point where I find, it's just.
Well, I've actually just been reading your book, so I'm reading Fuck Files at the moment, and I know that you said, and I need to get the updated version right because I think have you done a slight update on the Kindle version, or I know the paperback?
Yeah, revision for both of them. Actually, I was working with Nick, and there was a couple. It's not really about me on this one, but essentially, my first editor had to get fired, and then some slip ups with some versioning prints. So you have an older version. There's a new revision out. Basically, any problems you probably would have with it were acknowledged and should have been fixed day one, but now they've been sorted out.
Oh, nice. Okay. Well, I need to download the updated version. But anyway, I'm really enjoying the book, and it struck me when I was reading it. Obviously, because I suppose we'd never really talked in detail before about your experiences in the Navy and everything. But I like the whole, like, you know, the seafaring side of things, and you know, coming into port and going into these dodgy bars and things like that. I think it's really cool because I've always been fascinated with these. I mean, like in Europe, as you know, we've got a few of these places. I mean, like Amsterdam is obviously the classic one. Then you've got Hamburg as well. You've got these these portside towns. They're always just so seedy, aren't they? And so dodgy, but such a lot of fun.
Oh, dude, yeah, Amsterdam. I've hit that one. I didn't know about Hamburg though, and I'm not gonna lie. When I got there, all I had to do was get rid of, like, if I can get rid of every Turkish chav that was there, it would have been a blast. That's the only problem I had with it.
with Amsterdam.
Yeah. There's always those three guys that look kind of like Lebanese or something like that. And there's always groups of three of them and everybody's bro. And I was like, oh, I like my seediness with a little bit of pomp and circumstance. Thank you.
Well, they keep trying to clear up these areas. I mean, like Amsterdam, they keep talking about cleaning it up. I think it probably has been cleaned up quite significantly from how it was maybe 10, 15 years ago. But Hamburg, I went to Hamburg. I've been to Hamburg about 2 or 3 times now, and I went a year or so ago actually with Tom Torero, the day game.
How's he doing, by the way? I haven't heard much from him in a long time.
Well, he's doing well, and if you go to his YouTube channel, he's starting to re-upload everything again. So the video, he made a video when we were in Hamburg, which I'll send to you. Actually, it's quite funny. But he filmed a load of stuff of us going around the red light district and everything, and it's back up now, which is quite cool. But yeah, we went there a year or so ago, and it was just it's a really funny place. It's just sort of like you've got, because the main town is actually quite posh. It's quite middle class, right? Quite sort of pomp and circumstance, and then you've got this area called the Reaper Barn, which is where the Beatles actually used to play in one of the clubs down there, and it's just the seediest portside area going. It's like a whole mile of this dodgy, like, you know, there's all strip bars, there's clubs, there's like
that sounds so much fun.
It's fantastic, right? And it's and like everything, it's got slightly hipsterized now. You can see a little bit of the hipsterization, but it's still kind of, and it's still quite seamy. And we went around there one night, and it was really, really funny. But I love those areas. It's just the atmosphere in those areas. It's such a lot of fun. It's so sort of, you could leave your sort of pretentiousness at the door, right? It's just like
that's exactly what I was thinking about, and that ties into charisma, where
exactly.
Like when you have nothing to lose, you can kind of you're really only focused on being charismatic or having fun in an attractive way. Is that fair assessment of what I would say charisma is? Yeah,
absolutely. Well, there are different definitions of it, and I mean, one of them is, which I talk about a lot in the course, is power, presence, and warmth. You know, if you've got those three things, you know, do you have a powerful demeanor? Do you have some presence? And also, are you present in the moment? And on top of that, are you quite warm as a personality as well? And they say if you combine all of those three things, that's the ultimate sort of marker of charisma. But yeah, I mean, but beyond that, I mean, yeah, I mean, I think ultimately the less that you give a damn, and I'm keeping my language relatively clean because of the show.
Aw.
The less you care, I think the cooler you are, right? And the great thing about areas like Hamburg and Amsterdam is that nobody cares, or nobody should care, and so you can just walk in and be however the hell you want to be, and then ultimately you're going to be more charismatic than if you were trying to be really careful and trying to be really mannered and polite and everything else.
Oh, dude, that's such the foreign port attitude. I love that, where you're just literally like, nobody cares. I'm gonna be gone in 2 days, and I'm never gonna see this place again. It just really frees you.
So, what sort of areas? Where were you going on tours and things? I mean, what sort of areas did you hit?
Let me see if I can still do this. Big ones I would hit. Funny enough, we go up and down the Pacific coast, so we'd hit up north like Alaska, Port Rupert. And it's in British Columbia, and there's a rule about BC is if your town starts with Prince, Port, or Fort, your town's a dump. But we would go up there. There was one stripper in town, and when we had to send our log rec, what we needed for supplies when we got there, the guy would let the bartenders or the owner of the bar know, and he would actually fly in strippers from Prince George, the biggest town nearby, another prince. Wow. So yeah, they would actually bring strippers in just for us, and it was just some crappy nowhere. Like guys would drive up to logging roads to party. But then we'd go down to Ensenada, another super seedy place, which was awesome. Like I remember walking into a bar and some dude was just getting a hand job in the back corner. And I was like, oh, nice. Oh my. I know. And it's the thing, it shocks you. But then I heard like apparently the night before my boss was there and he got stripped on stage by a bunch of people. And I think he got robbed that day too, but it was, but yeah, I love. And then we'd go down as far as the Baja, Panama, Puerto Rico. Wow. As you notice, like all the seedy places.
And what were those places like? Did they all have these sort of port areas? And are these port areas always that kind of thing?
Dude, it's the one thing I've learned. Like all over the world, most of the continents. I think I've missed Africa and Antarctica, but everybody's pretty much the same, except for the States, because for some reason you can't drink at the strip clubs there. But other than that, everybody else is exactly the same, and that's why I was curious about yours, and maybe elaborate this on me. So when you're talking about charisma, a lot of guys always have that complaint that, well, this may work on American girls, but what about British girls? Well, what about Eastern European girls? And my impression is, for the most part, they're all generally the same, and they all respond the same way. I mean, a couple little differences. Like, for example, Korean girls, because they're all studying English, if you walked in as a Westerner, automatically get a bit of a bump.
Yeah.
Or some other places like China, you maybe get a little bit downgraded, but for the most part, it's all been the same. Is that kind of where like you took your approach to teaching these guys charisma? Or?
Well, I think it's a universal language. Yeah, for sure. I don't think you can really go wrong with it, because ultimately what I'm trying to teach, I mean, I call it Charisma and Dating Academy, and the first section is all about the dating marketplace. So I'm talking about really expanding on the Rollo Tomasi idea of, you know, we're now in this global dating economy. It's kind of challenging, it's tough, etc., etc. And so then I say, so what's the solution to that? And the first thing that I do is I talk about charisma. So the first section is about charisma, but then I talk about the bad boy archetype and the dark triad stuff, because that is, to me, is really important, because it's all very well being sort of like a warm, kind of like charismatic guy, but have you got edge to you? And if you've got edge, then that is really key. And then on top of that, I talk then about what I call radical differentiation, which is effectively like standing out from the crowd.
Right.
Like let's say the evolution of peacocking, right? So it's not peacocking, but it's that sort of idea. How do you stand out? How are you different? And then I go into, and then I have a whole section on game where I just talk about game and techniques, basically. So it's sort of like, and I think if you combine those things, then I don't think it really nationality matters so much. I think you're going to, I mean, obviously there are tweaks. There are things that you've got to be a little bit careful for in different, you know, environments. Yeah. But overall, I think if you've got those components, I think you're going to be successful in any sort of dating marketplace.
But what if a guy is ugly? What if he doesn't have a jawline, Troy? Did you think about this? Did you tell them that you?
Well, then he needs to.
I apologize to the audience, too. That's such a softball thing to throw at him.
Yeah. Then he just needs to go onto Reddit and find the appropriate forum and just sort of marinate there for the rest of his life. No, I honestly don't think. I mean, I think the whole looks thing, and I mean, I know it's a cliche to say it, and I know somebody who is effectively shilling a course about a game is always going to say this, but I do think that the looks, height, money thing is massively overrated, right? Because yes, those things can be helpful, but you can also mess up even if you've got those things. And on the other side of the equation is, I mean, look, I mean, sometimes I listen to these black pill dudes. We have these black pill dudes on Twitter or
if you guys don't know, it's essentially like existential despair.
Yeah,
taking red pill knowledge and then complaining about it all day is, I guess, that's.
It's the idea that if so I suppose in the most extreme form, if you don't have the perfect jawline and if you don't, you don't look like Ryan Gosling type thing, then you may as well give up because you're never going to get a shot, right? Is the sort of what it comes down to. Yeah. And it's kind of like, I sometimes think, have these guys never been out of their house? Because all you have to do, because all you have to do is go to a bar. I mean, there's a bar in London, right, called which is obviously closed at the moment for obvious reasons, but normally it's called Zoo Bar, and it is literally like a zoo, right? You go in there, and it's like literally, it's like there's like strange. It's like the bar scene in Star Wars, right? It's like the
cantina.
Sort of yeah. It's like that, and there are places like this all over the UK, and you see dudes who are with dudes who've got no teeth, who've got like bloody tattoos on their faces and stuff, who are getting attention from girls. And it's now, okay, you can say, well, what's the quality like, etc. But the idea that you have to be this model like Chad in order to get any access in the dating marketplace is just a nonsense. And people really need to stop saying it because it's just not true.
Well, it's funny that you mentioned that because there's a guy in the chat right now, Physician Rehab. I'm actually going to get him on Red Morning, probably like the week after next. I don't know, we're working out the schedule there. Yeah. And he is the best cheerleader you could say, because I don't know, say it yourself in the chat. He's not a 10 out of 10, but like his success post-divorce would completely blow that out of the water. Like we even just talked yesterday about it. It's like, it's hard. I know it's always, I have a friend, but like there's real guys doing this.
And this
look at me. And I don't have the huge jawline either. I'm not 6'10" or whatever. And I think he's on the short. I don't want to say too much about him, but yeah, not a 10 out of 10. All those things the black pills complain about, he's still slaying. And it's not just like road trash. There's some pretty decent lookers in there.
I mean, the point is, right, here's the thing, right? You can punch above your weight, okay? Mm-hmm. And I mean, I know this because I've done it, right? I've done it in my own life, and I'm not, I don't have that jawline. I'm not 6'10". I'm not, whatever. I mean, I'm not many of those things. And I have certainly punched above my weight in my life, right? And I just from that alone, I just look at that and I think, okay, well, how did that happen? And a lot of it is down to the mindset stuff, to be honest, because I've been in situations with, and this was even really before I sort of learned about game as something that you could read a book about, before I even really knew about all of this stuff. Yeah. I've been in situations where I've outperformed guys who were better looking and were taller than me. For example, why would that be? Well, ultimately, it's. I think it really comes down to Royce's irrational self-confidence, right? If you are a cocky enough mofo, and if you really believe that you are the shit, almost regardless of objective reality, that can carry a lot of weight. Okay.
Well, how could people deny that either? Like, how bad is fake news right now, or what Karen is doing to the world? Basically, her feelings drive everything. People can acknowledge that, but then not acknowledge that maybe when it comes to sex, they might have that same attitude. Like, it's not even a hard sell.
Yeah, I think people want to let themselves off the. I think people want to let themselves off the hook, right? And these are just buffers, aren't they? It's just easier. It's easier to be a black pill guy and to be on those forums and to get a little dopamine hit when somebody likes your post or whatever. When you're saying, I'm never going to get any female attention. It's kind of easier to do that than have to put yourself out there and risk failure. But listen, I mean, here's one thing I would say. I was pretty much that guy actually when I was younger. I was pretty much what you would now call like an incel before I was age 20, right? And that was it was partly true and it was partly false, because the actual truth of the matter is, so I went through school and sort of adolescence and I never really had any traction. I didn't have girlfriends or anything like that. And I also became a big Morrissey fan. And so I really like the whole aesthetic of like I'm unlovable. Nobody will ever, I'm just, my genetics were. I was born to die out. My genetics will never be replicated, and all this kind of thing. And I really bought into it because in a funny way,
must have loved Point Break then.
Yeah, exactly. And actually, it kind of wasn't really true, because the truth of the matter is that when I was at school, there were actually some girls who were interested in me, and I just never escalated it with them, because usually I would have a one-itis who was somebody else, and I'd be like, oh no, but what about her? And so I kind of ignored the ones who actually were interested and were making moves on me. So I constructed a narrative in my head that I was sort of somehow special and different, because I just
you play Calvin ball with your life, basically.
Exactly. And so had the internet been invented at that time, and had Reddit been invented and all that, I probably would have been on those forums typing that kind of stuff, because it kind of makes you feel good in a perverse way, right? But what I realized when I stepped out of that paradigm and started actually just talking to people and going out the house was that it was all garbage, and that I was able to turn it on its head. So I'm not doubting that some of those guys do have a real problem, and I'm not, that do find it more difficult. I'm not surprised.
But it's not insurmountable.
I don't believe it's insurmountable for most guys. I'm not going to say for every single guy. Maybe there are some guys but I think in most cases it's not insurmountable for sure.
Yeah. Quick pause here for the super chat. Thank you. $5 from Future MD1. 6'5", 276, but plastic surgery resident. Broke AF, but a savage. Looking forward to the audiobook. Ryan, cheers. Oh, dude, are you really that big? You realize you're like the size of The Rock, right? You're going to be a doctor. I wouldn't really worry about it. Any problems you have are like self-inflicted. Charisma problems. If only there was a place that you could have some techniques to learn how to practice charisma.
Exactly. if only there was a world-class course that's been constructed specifically for the purpose of helping you to increase your charisma and have women flocking to you, that would be amazing. So,
dude, and it's funny. I was thinking about this. So in college, I had kind of the same problem. I was like a silver tongue, have a good conversation, a lot of fun, really hot friends, all that stuff. But I was never able to close. Like I never knew how to do charisma past just being friendly.
Well, yes. Yeah, exactly. And
that would be helpful. Like there's a lot of guys, you're right. There may be like 5 out of 10 perfectly down the line able to do stuff, but they just don't know how to leverage that charisma into what they actually want.
Well, I think there's two sides of this, right? So I think on the one hand, there are guys who know a bit about game because they've read articles, or they've read books, or they've watched YouTube videos and things like that. But they don't have the charisma side of things down, and more importantly, they don't have the mindset side of things down. So I've coached guys like this who will go into an interaction,
right,
and they will sort of say the right things, they'll say the right lines, but there's nothing behind it. There's no fire behind the eyes. There's no charisma behind it, right?
Yeah, he's not feeling it.
So, and those interactions tend to fall flat because the girl's just like, well, so what, right? And he's saying the right stuff. He's doing the right game stuff, but he's not getting the girl excited in the right way. And so that's one problem. The other problem is that guys are quite personable and they can be social, but they can't close, right? They don't know the game stuff. So what the course I put together aims to do is to cover both ends of that spectrum. So whichever side of it you're coming from, this should have you covered, because it goes through all the mindset stuff and the charisma stuff, but it also goes through the rudiments of game as well. So you've got an A to Z of how to do game effectively. I mean, there's a guy actually I know who's got a YouTube channel, Alex Forrest, who's an older gentleman who does daytime approach, and he is, I think, is a classic example of the second type of guy who actually is quite charismatic and is quite personable. And right. he wasn't like an introvert. He wasn't, he would be quite a bon vivant and take people out for dinner and be very social and everything, but he never knew how to close. And so his success in terms of dating was negligible, because he so you've got to have both sides of the coin.
That's kind of neat. I like that. I like hearing older guys doing it. Like Chesty will confirm this in the chat and Physician Rehab, but one of the guys that joined us about a year into it when we first got here, he was 65, and he just finally kind of like, he had everything down pat. He knew how to ditch a girl. He knew how to have frame. The only thing he didn't know was like that last little bit, because his wife died of cancer. Like, he literally had his unicorn, and then she passed away, and then he didn't know what else to do. But every girl he had to compare to her, and it didn't work. But I actually taught him how to do like that hater just a little bit line I always get. I taught him what that's about. And then once he realized it's actually charismatic to be a little bit aloof, like charming, but not really care. Yeah. And I think that really helped him with his close rate too. So I totally resonates with what you're talking about.
Yeah, exactly. Well, so in the course, the charisma section is a lot about, because I did quite a deep dive into studying charisma. So I've read quite a lot of books about it. I've watched, people doing TED Talks and YouTube type videos. I've read some of the academic studies on it and so on and so forth. So what I wanted to do in that section was to sort of put across some of the almost sort of canonical knowledge about charisma. So how do I raise my levels of charisma? Okay, just which you could use for business, you could use for networking, you could use for many, many different things. But then you need to then take it a bit further, which is why I then go into the dark triad, bad boy archetype stuff, because I think that's what starts to really make the difference in terms of dating. Because if you're just some kind of, as we all know, if you're just some kind of ineffectual nice guy, then that's not really going to get you where you want to be. And having that edge is I think the thing that really makes the difference. And that's, I guess, is sort of what you're talking about with the hater a little bit kind of thing, because that's quite a dark triad thing to say in a way, isn't it? That's quite a dark triad thing to
but that's the thing. Like, I think you're on the same page as this. A lot of guys talk about dark triad, and I won't name any deaf names here, but where they talk about it as if you're some mystical ninja warrior who wants to see blood in the streets. And I'm like, dude, you're making this out to be way cooler than it needs to be. Just stop caring so much. That narcissism is kind of like a healthy sense of self-grandeur. And then Machiavellianism, just cunning. Like the fact that you'd be willing to study how to be more charismatic from somebody or from a book or do research, that's essentially Machiavellian.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, like what I always, and the reason, well, one of the reasons that I wanted to go big on this in the course is because the book that I did, How to Be an Arsehole, is probably my best-selling book, I think, and maybe because of that slightly provocative title. But I think what I had to say in that book was useful, and it was resonant. It resonated. So I wanted to bring it into a video course format, right?
Is that the one in the bundle? That's in the bundle. Here, link for this one's in the chat if you guys are curious what we're talking about here.
Yeah, it's in that bundle. Yeah. So I kind of lost my
cut your train of thought.
Yeah.
But we're talking about dark triad.
Yeah. So I wanted to bring that into the course because I think it's a really important thing, because as we know, most guys probably that come to this space, they're kind of nice guys, and that's what's tripping them up. At the same time, I was at pains to say, look, this isn't about becoming Patrick Bateman. This isn't about, we're not saying you have to become Hannibal Lecter. It's not, you need to be aware of these things, and you can sprinkle them on top of your regular character. But it doesn't mean that you become some horrendous person to spend time with or anything like that. It's just that you've got to know the levers to push, right?
Well, that's the thing, because I don't think you can technically teach somebody to be psychotic. There actually is like a brain issue that either through trauma or brain damage in the developmental phase. So you can't really be fully psychopathic. You can kind of replicate the good parts of it. I mean, the good parts is in the parts that help you be charismatic. But I mean, you can't essentially turn into a guy who kills cats or something stupid like that. You can't practice that.
No, the first exercise is you've got to kill a cat when you. It's like Fight Club. It's like Fight Club, and unless they do it, they don't get in. They don't get into the next. They don't get into the webinars.
Dude, you shouldn't even joke about that. 4chan, they'll put up with just about anything in there, but for some reason, like cats are where they draw the line. They will hunt guys down.
Yeah. That was a joke, by the way. In case my mum's watching. My mum's a big cat lover, so that was a joke. But yeah, it's not. It's well, yes, you're right, because psychopathy in its true sense is like a medical diagnosis. I mean, you can't you can't train somebody to be that, and nor would you want to. It's a it's an issue that you need to go and get sorted out. But I mean, I think the way that I look at it is more in the region of being lacking in empathy, right?
Yeah.
And if you've got, and we actually talked about this before, didn't we, on rule zero, I think. But if you've got too much empathy, that can be unfortunately that can be a bit of a handicap, because you're a people pleaser, right? So if you could turn the dial down on that a bit, then that's going to put you in a better position. And I think you can train yourself to do that a bit. I mean, a little bit, because in the end, it's sort of it's kind of being your own mental point of origin, isn't it? Because it's sort of like, well, if you think, well, what's the most important thing to me is myself and the things that I want to get, then that's naturally going to make you a little bit sort of less empathetic, because you're going to think, well, I'm just going to put that in front of what this person may or may not want, and that's going to help you, I think.
Yeah, well, that's the funny thing, because I don't remember if we talked about it on that last time we did. It was like a year ago, so I can't remember. But I brought up the science of killology, something I learned through the military. This guy, Lieutenant Colonel Dave Grossman, I always have to look up his name because I never remember it. He figured, like, from World War I to World War II. World War I, they used bullseye targets, and that's how they practice shooting. And then they found in the field that people were just 75% of the time weren't even shooting at a target. They were shooting above their heads or off to the side, or because, rightfully so, people aren't psychopaths, and the idea of shooting somebody in the face, not too cool, even if it is somebody on the other side of the front lines. And so what he thought is like, okay, so obviously psychopaths are really good at this, but people aren't. So what do we do? And this kind of ties into what you're saying. So they switched the bullseye targets to silhouette targets. And if there's Americans in the chat, confirm this for me, but I've heard it's actually illegal to buy those like standard silhouette targets that the military uses for gun ranges, just for that, because then they found that the kill rate went up incredibly, not because it turned guys into psychopaths, but it trained guys to just see a silhouette, shoot at the silhouette. And I think we're talking the same language here when I suggest that you could learn the things that are helpful in psychopathy the same way that soldiers were able to learn how to shoot at, the enemy more effectively, just by not so much by changing the way you think about the world, but just reframing it, which I think is what you meant by mental point of origin.
Yes. And I think as well, also, fundamentally, guys just need to be aware of this dynamic, right? The fact that, I mean, because for some of us, I think it's counterintuitive, right? That, I mean, many of us needed to actually be taught that nice guys finish last, and that actually it's the joke, or maybe you sort of observed it, but you didn't really internalize it. And sometimes it just needs to be pointed out to you. It just needs to be pointed out in detail. Look, these are the facets that actually of a deeply attractive, charismatic character. And
everybody had to be taught, but that's the thing. Like, I was like you, I wasn't really taught at 13. I mean, I saw my stepdad was dark triad as hell. I'd say he's probably psychopathic, but I wasn't taught not the healthier, but the more useful parts of that. It was just like when Rollo calls it promise keepers. Mom was mad, so I never want to do anything there, even though that guy managed to hold my mom for like 20 years and it attracted her in the first place. I just ignored all that. And I'm like, well, she's mad. She's my favorite girl, and I refuse to learn it. And so I think a lot of guys, you're right. Like, they do, even if they do see it, it's not necessarily something they adapt because they're investments in something else. In this case, it was, divorced mom. That's the only parent you have with you. So obviously you're going to, she's my best mom ever. I might as well treat her well. It's like one-itis from the womb. Yeah,
exactly. Well, I mean, do you think that some guys are too invested in the idea of being a good, moral, upstanding,
Is that a real question? Is that real? Of course. That's what drives me nuts. It's like a moral thing, but if you really dig down into it, and most of the time when I hear guys doing this, their morality stems from either they never want to be like the dad that mom divorced and complained about constantly, or they never want to be the dad that married his high school sweetheart and went 40 years and died in each other's arms, and they can't get that. So they either aspire to be it or they want to be everything but it. But it all kind of stems from that. And it sucked my charisma out of my life for the longest time. I essentially had to learn it from a bunch of dudes who played volleyball from redneck towns when we go out to the bars in college.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's kind of. I think the I think the be a nice guy narrative is so is so drummed into people, so socialized into people that even when you see evidence to the contrary, you still kind of maintain it. You know, because I mean, I remember when I was at school or at college. There was the classic thing happened where there was one of these girls that I really liked. You know, I had the one itis for, and then she ended up seeing the sort of the archetypal, the sort of central casting, jerk who was a jock and the head of the football team or whatever, that dude. And even though so really at that point I should have said, oh right, I see, so this is the kind of these are the qualities that I should emulate and blah blah blah. But I kind of didn't, because there wasn't internet at that time. Nobody told me, so I was just a bit like, oh, that's a bit weird. But that was just one example of it, right?
Right.
And so it didn't sort of make me like reassess the whole paradigm. I was just like, oh, that's a bit weird. And then, all right, well, I'll try Jane over here instead. Using the same flawed tactics.
So that's cool. So like your whole first part of the course is essentially all those like use cases, those guys who for some reason refuse to do it if they did see it or they've just never been exposed to it. It's just kind of showing them that is actually a thing and it actually is effective. And there's reasons why you probably are fighting it right now.
Yeah, for sure. Although, I mean, the way I really kick off is I talk about the, like I say, about the globalized dating marketplace and all of that stuff. And, it seems to me that, I don't know how you feel about this, but it seems to me that things have shifted massively over the last 5 to 10 years. And that's not to say that you can't, that it's suddenly become impossible and then we're living in this sort of horrific, post black pill reality where nobody's ever going to get a date unless they're,
perfect.
Unless they're nearly 7 foot tall or whatever. But at the same time, I think things are challenging in probably a way that they weren't even 10 years ago or so. And guys need to realize that. And so then the argument goes, okay, so what do you do about that? Well, you need to become exceptional, right? Or you need to develop a certain degree of X factor. So
I don't even know if it's different or it's challenging more as opposed to just different. Because I remember when I was like 19 and I first like in college starting to do this stuff, there was still like you still wrote phone numbers on napkins.
Yeah.
We had cell phones by the end of it, but that's the thing, right? Like imagine going out and you're like, oh, I forgot a pen, and that would basically kill your chances of getting a number that night. As opposed to now where it's like, well, as long as I got a swipe on Tinder, that's a guaranteed approach.
Yeah, but I mean,
because you don't get a rejection on Tinder. You just don't get swiped. You don't get true. I have a boyfriend and I have to go, or you don't get away from me or anything.
Yeah. But what do you think about the argument that what you get now, or what you could potentially get now, which you didn't get back then, is
the damaged women thing?
Well, no, not that. Is Mr. Tate sitting on his standing outside his Lambo, like hitting up the girl that you're interested in on Instagram, and offering to et cetera, right? I mean, so now.
Yeah, well, I mean, he said it, so it must be true.
Well, theoretically, now we've got this global marketplace, right? So you could be talking to a girl in your local town, and trying to get her to come out on a date, and meanwhile, Chad Thundercock, who's standing on the yacht, counting all his money from his OnlyFans profit, or whatever it is making moves on her, and that guy could win out over you. I mean, that is new. That's something that we didn't contend with back in the day.
I mean, if you're and that's the thing, you're right about the top tier guys maybe getting top tier women from a larger radius than they normally would. But how many people? I know everybody says they only get 9s and 10s, but how many guys are actually getting 9s and 10s? I'm going to argue nobody. By definition, people aren't getting 9s and 10s because there just aren't that many of them. And the ones that are usually end up in New York as models, or, some cam girl for Tate or whatever. So everybody has like 6s and 7s. I'd say at most 7s. We could say an 8. Let's even say 8.
Yeah.
And as long as you set your sights below, like I need that one supermodel, which you probably weren't going to get before, as opposed to now anyway. Like, are you really worried about some guys like, hey, this 6 out of 10 girl that there's 5 million of in my city? I'm going to invite her onto my yacht. It's like, I don't know, man.
I think it's, I mean, my feeling on it is that,
I think if he's in town and she's there, yeah, sure, if there's nothing else to do, but
I think
that didn't change anyway.
I think it's certainly been exaggerated. I think it's certainly an exaggerated threat for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what I mean? I don't think this stuff is happening all the time. I don't think it's happening. You know,
but you're right. It does change at least the perception, if not some of the use. I always keep saying use cases like it's a damn business, but it's the best word I can think to fit it. So yeah, I'm not arguing with you there for sure.
I think
you are right.
Yeah, well, I think it's changed. I think it's certainly changed perceptions at least, because if you're now, the archetypal cute girl, and you're on Tinder and you're on Instagram and all the rest of it, and you're getting like 9 million, likes on all your pictures and everything like that. I mean, that has got to have some kind of psychological effect on that girl who previously might have been somewhat more humble and somewhat more,
the ego boost. Yeah, that's fair. I will grant you that one. But I mean, to be fair, that's always been something about American girls too. I don't know. The rest of the world, I guess, is getting it now. That's the big difference. Because American girls, all my travels, every country I've been to, the only girls that I was actually like irritated with were American girls. No offense to you guys. I'm sure there's some wonderful ones that aren't on the coasts, but jeez.
Yeah, they are quite, they can be somewhat irritating, I have to say.
All right, here, let's hit this guy's question. Adriel Ramos, $2 super chat. Here's the question, Troy. Then when do women hit the wall?
19. It's all over. They got a 1 year window, and then that's it. No, I think I mean it kind of varies, doesn't it? Really, I would say. I mean, I would probably be a little bit more generous on this than some people. I would say early 30s, to be honest.
Yeah, well, I'd say about the same. Basically, when Becky turns into Karen, or when Stacy turns into Karen.
Yeah,
it's the best way to refer to it.
I mean, obviously, it's different in individual cases, etc., etc. But I think early to mid 30s is sort of.
Here's the thing, too. Why does that? Here's a good question. Why does the wall matter? Like, let's say from a charisma standpoint. I'm on your course. You're showing me how some of my old models are looking at the world are probably bad and not helpful. And I should probably develop some new ones, get the parts of the dark triad personality that are attractive and adopt them into my life. And now I've become, it's going to sound like a nerd thing to say, like 30% more charismatic with 10% more edge, put all my stats into dexterity. You know what I mean?
We guarantee 500% more charismatic.
Roll initiative. Yeah. But that's the thing. So here's my question. When a girl hits the wall before and after, how does that affect that guy finished your course, 500% more charisma? Like why does he even need to worry about the wall other than looks? But I mean, hot girls are hot girls.
Well,
I
don't know really. I mean, I don't think he, I like with everything, I think it's down to the individual. I don't think he has to worry about it. I mean, it's whoever he's attracted to, he should go for, right? I mean, I don't want to, I don't want to be the sort of, the police of who you should be.
The categorical imperatives.
Yeah, I mean, I have my own tastes, and but if somebody, I mean, if you mean in terms of how he approaches them, is he going to approach them differently? I mean, I think they're probably, I mean, in a sense, I think my sense of it is that the really cocky stuff, the really jerk boy stuff, works pretty well on somewhat younger women. I think if you pull that on somebody who's in their sort of mid 30s or so, they're going to be, I think in a lot of cases they're going to look on it somewhat askance. They're going to be like, who the hell, because their priorities have shifted. They're not in it for the drama as much. Well, arguably they're not in it for the drama as much, so you might want to moderate it a little bit.
Well, then that's my other question then. So obviously guys are having to learn charisma, edginess, a little bit of dark triad, like how to essentially get out of your own way for success.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's common or if it's just because I see a lot of brands talking about this. Like, remember that Corey Capella guy? When Carl and I were talking about, I think it was Carl, you and me were talking about how we hate guys who just brag for the sake of it. Like the bravado is clearly like insecurity. Then he gets on, talks about, first thing he does is talk about how he was doing his Tinder date and then texting another girl on her back. And I was just like, oh, talk about falling on deaf ears. But point was being able to calibrate. And I think that's important. And I was curious if you can go over the stuff on your course, at least give a guys a feeler for what guys would do. Because, I mean, you're not going to be the guy who just walks up to a 23-year-old and a 33-year-old with the exact same edgy, charismatic approach. You're going to tailor it to this specific person you're getting on. And you have to be able to see them and understand intuitively which ones are going to work better. I was just curious if you could talk at length on that.
Well, we're certainly going to be having a module on that because I'm doing live webinars to go along with this as well, and we're certainly going to have a module where we talk about calibration, because yes, 100%, it is very, very important. I mean, and you have to be able to. You need to become socially aware, and you need to become aware of also the different targets that you are interacting with, right? And you need to be able to modulate up and down. And social awareness and the ability to sort of turn the dial up and down is very key to this kind of stuff, because that's the other thing about charisma, right? I mean, it's not a one size fits all. You can't say, oh, this person's charismatic, so everybody's going to love them. I mean, it doesn't really work like that. There are people that I could say, yes, that person is charismatic, but I still don't particularly like them anyway, right? I mean, Nigel Farage is one of them. I mean, Nigel Farage is charismatic, sure. I can see that. I can, I wouldn't try to deny that. Do I like him? No, not really. So it's not like you just hit this mark of like, right now I'm charismatic, now everyone's going to like me. There has to be more to it than that. And so when you're going into the venue and you're looking at the different girls there and so on and so forth, you have to be able to know how to turn the dial up and down depending on your audience. So that's definitely something that we'll be getting into in the webinars. I mean, as far as the course is concerned, this is more about just taking guys from Chode to Chad, if you like. So this is more like, okay, so this is the status quo. This is how things are out there at the moment. It is challenging. However, if you're here, we can get you to here, right? And that's gonna lift your overall. If you imagine that glow of that sort of ready bright glow around you of like charisma and edginess, right? It's going to turn that up.
I was going to insert the Simpsons clip where Homer is 10 feet tall and solid gold. Do you remember this one?
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. It's going to be like that. And then we're going to talk about refining it more as we go into the, we go into the webinar section, because that's 100%. That's absolutely. And there is a section on calibration within the game module. The game module as well. So that's 100% important. But
it's funny too, you mentioned the webinars, because I was gonna say, personal history for me, I have taken 2 courses out of these online courses you see. The first one was, do you remember Christian McQueen?
Yeah, of course, yeah.
He had, I don't know, some 6-figure business course. It was on like a super sale, so I'm like, yeah, whatever, I'll finally try it.
Did you do the one about the course advertising one?
I don't remember the name of it. It was the one about how to build an online business, essentially.
So
I got it, and I mean, it was okay, but it really was like, I didn't know what level of knowledge you should have going in and what level of knowledge you were expected to go out. He never really elaborated on that, so it hit very bare bones stuff like, this is how you build a website, here's some companies you should do, which, I mean, if you come from zero knowledge, it's probably helpful, but it would have been nice to have known that and save myself 30 hours of study.
Yeah.
But that was the thing. It was just audio. Listen to a guy talk. It was like buying somebody's record for $100. And I didn't really come out with it as much. And most of the things that were on there, I had to learn myself afterwards the hard way by trying it. The flip side of that is the second course I did was John's body language mastery, which, I mean, I already had like I said, I've got a decent level of knowledge about body language already from various experience. I won't get into it here to waste your time. But he did those webinars where it was twice a day. He would go on and basically like hand spoon feed what the guys were having trouble with when they'd go over the modules. And I thought that was great, because it essentially turned it from, I mean, everybody's got that image of online coursing being like these little scams that people do. It's like, here, I'll turn you into a OnlyFans pimp. And you're like, all right, whatever. But then that one there, it was that nice personal touch. And it reminded me of when they first brought online teaching into college and university. But the subject matter was more useful than underwater basket weaving. So the fact that you're doing that, I think that's awesome. It's like nobody does that. I think you're the second guy I've heard. Obviously, I'm biased. I like you, but you're the second guy I've ever heard of who actually takes the personal time to make sure that it's not just people buying the course, but actually internalizing and understanding it. So I hope you don't mind if we finish fluffing you now.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Nice bit of fluffing there. Yeah, I mean, look, I mean, and all props to John here, really, because I mean, you know, what he's done with body language mastery and those webinars is awesome. And I mean, I am blowing smoke up his ass now, but he's not here. He's not here for an in-person fluffing. So, but I mean, you know, those webinars are awesome for sure. And I mean, I don't know whether he knew quite what that would grow into before it sort of you know, before he started them. But I was influenced by that because I mean he's you know he's building his hot dude army and you know he's building a big community, and I think that's part of his whole thing. And I see the value in that 100%. But just taking a step back from that, I just think having that personal side to an online course is really, really valuable. Just to go through each of the so I'm going to go through each of the modules. I'm going to have 2 webinars per module, so I'm probably in a similar model to him. So I'll have morning and an evening, and we'll go through each of the modules in turn, and we'll just go through the material just to make sure that people understand the material. We can work on sort of individuals within the group and help them out with their individual issues, etc., etc. And we'll see where it goes, you know. But I just really like that model because I think you're right. I mean, the online course space, obviously, lots of people have been building online courses, and there is a sort of I mean, obviously, there's skepticism a little bit sometimes about.
I mean, there's no quality contron. There's no accreditation board, so it's wild west out there.
And some courses are really good. I mean, I've been on a few. I mean, I've done affiliates for people, so I've obviously been able to access their courses and so on. And there's some great stuff out there. I mean, it's not like it's all, you know, scam material or anything like that. But if you're getting the course, but you're also getting the person saying, and I'm going to take you through the material as well, that I think is, I think there's a lot of value to that, really. And that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to.
Oh, you're preaching to the converted. Don't even get me wrong there. But it's funny too, cutting edge. So literally tip of the spear, because like I follow Jeff Miller. If you guys don't know, he's like the arch nemesis of Rollo.
Oh, but he's the poly dude.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. I didn't really care about that stuff. I just like he's an evolutionary psychologist, a PhD, tenured professor, and he was doing a college or university equivalent of an online course. He had like Sonia Mann and a bunch of other people, and they actually just came out with a report, I think 3 to 6 months ago, where they talked about how their first course went and the after action report. And it's funny because everything that you just said about the online webinar model was like the takeaway from this group of, I think it was 12 professors from like 6 different universities, a couple creative writers on all, and it wasn't even anything to do with charisma or the sphere or anything, but it's like academia is really trying to catch up. And this is literally the one thing that they're trying to adopt to their own model too, which I found hilarious because you can basically get an MIT degree right now on YouTube. They put all their stuff out there for free, and they can't even seem to like do as well as, I guess, yours or body language mastery. I don't know. Just makes me laugh. A bunch of nerds who used to watch a guy with aviator shades and a feather boa are now like leading the charge on education.
Well, I mean, the whole education space is pretty crazy, isn't it? Really, and I mean, like what Christian McQueen was talking about this a few years ago, and he was right. You know, I mean, one of the things he would always say is he'd always bring attention to the fact that, you know, the online course space is exploding, and not just in this little corner of the internet, but just in, you know, everything. You know, probably gardening and underwater basket weaving and all the rest of it. You know, there's online courses, and it's $1 billion industry. I mean, it's massive. So
it's already that big. Damn.
I think it's. I don't quote me on that, but it's big. I just made it up. But no, it's big, and I believe it's forecasted to get very, you know, to grow exponentially. Yeah, you know, I think, and then people will react against that, and they'll say, yeah, but you can scam, it can be a scam and all the rest of it. And I mean, yeah, sure, it can, but it's like, I think if you're doing this with the right intentions and you're bringing as much value to it as possible, I think it's an incredibly valuable thing for people. Certainly
Yeah,
helped me out.
it's just like buying a used car. If you don't do your due diligence, of course. I mean, that's honestly, that's why I was chatting with you, because I'm like, this would be awesome. Show guys this stuff, because you can't show some guy an advertisement and get an understanding of what he means by like a webinar and charisma and that. So I kind of like these longer form ones, because I thought, it really sounds cool. I haven't seen it yet, but it sounds promising. And from what I know of you, I know you can teach it. So I thought, whatever, we'll talk about it. And guys here were kind of like, yeah, maybe you can go from a maybe to, oh, well, maybe I will.
Well, absolutely. I mean, and thanks for having me on, because it's always cool to catch up, and it's cool to chat about it and stuff. I mean, what was I going to say? In terms of the course itself, I put a lot of work into it. I mean, I spent a lot of time planning it and writing it, and then we spent. I had a cameraman, and we worked together in London. We had like 3 really intensive days where we were recording it. I mean, there's 10 hours worth of material, so I mean, there's a lot of value in there for sure. But beyond that, it's about, okay, so what can make the biggest difference? And I think this is where someone like John's really good, because he really cares about his audience, and he will think, okay, so how could I really help these guys, and put it.
Well, I'd argue you do too.
Yeah, sure. And it's like, well, putting out the course is one thing, and that's useful. But how could I really help guys to internalize this? And I think then doing the live tuition stuff is the next step really for that.
Nice. Anyways, we're coming up on an hour. I was going to ask you a favor. I know you gave me an affiliate link, but I don't want to affiliate this. I just want you to plug it. Can you grab your link, put it in the chat if guys are curious where they can see more about this and sign up if they want to or whatever?
Yeah, I can do. Although I don't know if I've got access to the chat here, so I could.
Put it in private chat and I'll do it then. I forgot. StreamYard is bad for that.
Yeah,
it'll be good. So, anyways, guys, we'll probably chat for a little bit longer. I don't know how much time you got here. I only slated an hour, but I mean, there's no time limit to this.
Yeah, I've got a little bit of time. Yeah, for sure. Right. Sorry,
because I wanted to talk more about the seedy stuff, because I love how you're getting the foreign port experience, and that's kind of like your niche of fun. So I don't know. Have you made it? Yeah. Have you made it as far yet into the book where I start talking about like the goth bar?
Yes, I have actually. Yes, I think it's just got to that part. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, I don't want to spoil it for anybody, but I loved that, because it's like you said, when you're in the seedy part and nobody cares. The other advantage of those parts is where somebody will stand out if they're not a regular. Goth bar was perfect. Everybody had, piercings and Slayer shirts and funky hair, whatever. But then there was always the one girl who was dressing in like Juicy Couture and Lululemons and pink shoes. And you're just like, it's almost like a big beacon saying, I'm here so my friends don't find out. And I absolutely loved that. It made everything so much easier when you actually, like, if you wanted to go and just have some fun, like a friend with benefit or whatever, go to somebody who's actively signaling that that's what they're looking for.
Yeah, that's a really interesting point. Actually, it's selecting your audience. Go to the audience who's buying. Right, don't try and sell to somebody who's not buying. But I've always had a fascination for those sort of like slightly more seedy areas in towns, though. And actually, it tends to be around transport hubs. Actually, so it tends to be either the areas around railway stations are often quite seedy in city.
And there's always that, the thing about the bus station or the trucker stops, that old rumor. I would suggest not going there unless that's your thing. Fill your boots.
Yeah.
But you're right. I guess that makes sense, because that was like Tinder, where people there was no accountability because people were only there for like 6-7 hours at a time.
Yeah, exactly. But the port areas are particularly raucous, and it's weird. What's also weird, right, is how there's a sort of like an element where it kind of sticks in the geography. I mean, I don't know these days how big, how many ships are going in and out of, some of these places, or if they're even as big in terms of trade or indeed military, sailing as they previously were. But the atmosphere sticks. It still is the seedy part of town.
Oh yeah, that social norm, you can't wash that off. It's part of the city.
Yeah, exactly. But around here, so this is quite near to Limehouse, and Limehouse is actually it's actually mentioned in The Picture of Dorian Gray by Oscar Wilde. So in that book, the guy has the picture of himself and he sticks it in the attic, and it gets older, and
Yeah,
he
yeah.
stays young, and because he stays young, he's able to do, and he's a rich, wealthy like aristocrat, so he's able to do lots of degenerate shit and get away with it. And so at one point in the book, he goes down to Limehouse because it was where all the Chinese immigrants lived. Goes down to Limehouse from the affluent west, comes over east to the dodgy East End, goes to Limehouse, and he goes to one of the opium dens to do opium with the Chinese because it was like, this is where it was all happening. So even back then, it was kind of seedy, and even to this day, there's still a little bit of a taint of it there when you go down that area. So it's kind of
the residue of the black dragons all over the walls.
yeah, exactly. So no, it's fascinating stuff. But Hamburg, I really like. I definitely want to go back though. I need to send you that video actually that we did with Tom Torero. But it's just like loads of neon lights and tacky bars and sort of it's fantastic. It's a lot of fun.
Oh, fair enough. Well, here's one for you too. Adrian wants to know as well, where do the Englishmen go for stag nights? And I was gonna say they go to Amsterdam because the locals there can't stand it. They hate like, I guess it's Southerners. Is Southerners the working class part of Britain, or is it Northerners?
Probably. Well, I'll upset the British viewers if I say anything now because it could be either. To be fair, I mean, like it might be Northerners, it could be Southerners. There are, but basically the British are hated everywhere. I mean, we are just like wherever we go, we've just got this terrible reputation. I mean, in terms of the question, I mean, for quite a long time it was Eastern Europe. Actually, people started to go to Eastern Europe because when all these like cheap flights were started to come on the market, and then you could go to somewhere like Lithuania. You could go to Riga for like £5 or so, or something ridiculous.
Dang.
So guys, or like Prague was a big one. Going to a lot of these Eastern European places. These days, I'm not even sure. I think it's a mixture. I mean, you get guys going to Vegas, so it sort of depends on how baller they are, really. But Eastern Europe was big. Eastern Europe really took over. I mean, places like Prague, places like Vilnius, Riga, Krakow.
Was Croatia big, or is that not far east enough?
Well, Croatia probably, yeah.
It was one of the ones for Canada. For some reason, we have like a trade agreement with them, and they were supposed to be our like segue into the EU. So a lot of Canadians over in Split.
Really? Can you get a longer visa there or anything, or what's the?
I don't know if it's changed. I haven't been there in a while, but at the time, you didn't even need a visa to work. Like you just had an agreement, like it was cool.
Oh, really? Could you just stay?
Yeah.
And how long could you stay for? Like sort of indefinitely? Or?
That's the thing. I was talking to a girl there at the casino who was from Montreal, and she was giving me the lowdown. I was pretty drunk, so I caught maybe half of it. And the laws most likely changed now. But at the time, it was essentially just like free exchange because they wanted a really good trade deal between us. So the working stuff was just no big deal. Although it only ever seemed to be us going there. I never met many Croats coming here, but
Croatia's
in Montreal.
Croatia's a cool place. I've been to a few places. I was there with Tom Torero last year. Actually, we went to we landed in Dubrovnik and then we drove around for a bit. Then we went into Montenegro and all of this. So it's really nice down there. I've also been to what's that place beginning with Z called?
I can't pronounce that one if it's what I'm thinking.
Oh, I've forgotten the name of the place, the name of the city. It'll come back to me. I went to a very degenerate party there a few years ago, which ended with me. I actually laid on a bed of nails in Croatia, which was quite an interesting experience.
Cool. Was it like was it there for that purpose, or did you just fall down and there happened to be nails there?
No, it was there. It was there for that purpose. I was there with this girl that I was this I suppose plate that I was seeing at the time, and there was a bed of nails in this club, and I just thought, well, when in Rome, may as well give it a go. So yeah,
dude, that would have been awesome. All right, so hopefully that answers your question about where to go for stags, then, Adriano. Although if you're Australian, chances are you're just going to go to Thailand anyway. And I would say go to Phuket. It's way better than Bangkok. But from what I understand, after I was there, the city burned down and they had to rebuild it. So maybe it's better, maybe it's worse. I don't even know. That's the problem with these things is when you travel about, if you don't keep up on it, they change underneath you.
Yeah, exactly. Well, one of the problems with the sort of the seedy areas that we're talking about, these port areas and stuff, is that you've got these do-gooder councils that keep trying to do everything up all the time. So there's a sort of there's a sense of, you know, you have to get around these places and visit them before they start disappearing, you know, because a lot of them being changed and gentrified and all that kind of stuff. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's the worry about it too. Like how we're running out of third world places to go and slum it.
I know. That's why Rouge had to retire.
Yeah, that's why. But I was thinking about that too, because I know you said, again, first module you were talking about like how the landscape looks, map the terrain, and that's the problem now. Is you're right, like Mexico's kind of coming up wealth wise, even with the drug war around. Eastern Europe is now coming up on the world. Southeast Asia isn't even like, I'm counting the days to where I can't even get really crappy street meat in Southeast Asia. I'm pretty sure actually they're gone now thanks to the bat soup thing, but like that's just it. Where are we going to follow like a Japanese model where people are into like twisted tentacle stuff and in the privacy of their own homes, and we have like little niches catering to it?
Well, I mean that wouldn't be such a bad thing, would it? But I think there's, I don't know really. I think certainly in our lifetimes, I think there's still going to be plenty of opportunities to, you know, to find fun places and to have some amazing experiences. I mean, beyond that, I mean, who knows? But I think there's always niches. I mean, I think, and this is the thing actually, coming back to these black pill guys and these very nihilistic guys who sort of like, oh, there's no point in doing anything because it's all messed up unless you are, you know, you've got the
nihilism, but they couldn't even get through the whole book and find out what comes out the other end.
Yeah, exactly.
Lazy nihilists.
I think that there's always opportunities. There are always opportunities. You know, there's always somewhere you can go. There's always a different angle you could take, and that's, in my view, what guys should be looking for. You know, right? Instead of complaining, you should be like, well, where are the opportunities?
Yeah, go try them out. Actually, yeah, a couple guys in the chat are saying here Mykonos, which is good. I go to Santorini because I'm going to bring my wife with me. But when I would go down with my brother, he would always sneak off to Mykonos and then come back the next morning at like 6 a.m. and tell me how much fun it was. That's definitely a good one. Barcelona, I've heard overrated, but still a good thing. That's one of the other guys are suggesting.
Well, Barcelona is a really cool place actually as well. I mean, I haven't been there for a few years, but that's it's an awesome place. Really beautiful. It's really nice to spend time there and stuff. And that's actually also a port area, which is quite interesting. And there's some streets. So you got the main street that goes down to the marina is called La Rambla or Las Ramblas or whatever. And then you've got on both sides, you've got these really small labyrinthine like little streets. And one of them is called, on one side, it's called Barrio Chino. And Barrio Chino was this really, really seedy area, like really dodgy. And it's like, there's all these little
filthy Spaniards
and little like absinthe bars, and there's all hookers standing in the streets and stuff. It's really interesting. So that's a good place as well. Although again, got cleaned up a few years ago. You know, I don't know. It's all of these places.
All right, and then Nicaragua was the other one suggested, but we'll deal with Gus here. Thanks for the £2 super chat. Hey, you guys are using pounds again. Fuck, Brexit is real. How do you signal friends with benefits to girls? I'll hit this one quick, and then if you want to do the proper like coarse version of this answer, it's just I don't find you signal friends with benefits. I just find the absence of friend zone signals, and then that will naturally fall into place. But I'm curious your thoughts on it. You're the expert more than me. Well, I'm just a hobbyist.
Well, I agree with that, and also I think the absence of you making boyfriend signals is the way to go. So it's not that you signal it to her, it's just that you don't signal anything else to her. So it's more, this is one of these things where it's more what you don't say than what you do say that's important. And if you are making it clear through your demeanor that everything that you're doing is just, this is a bit of fun and there's nothing else to it, she's gonna know, she's gonna understand that. She's just gonna know. It's almost instinctual, you know.
Well, and I guess one thing I would add on to it too is guys have this habit of being preachy or judgy or getting irritated. And I would say, like, as soon as a girl gets a whiff of you judging her, that'll dry right up instantly. Like, judge, sure, if you have to judge her, just do it in your head. Yes, that's somebody's daughter. Yes, that's eventually going to be somebody's husband. Yes, that's eventually going to be somebody's mother. But she knew that coming into this. So none of that's your fault. None of that's your problem.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to reap the maximum rewards of the dating marketplace, then non-judgmentalism is just it's just essential, you know. Certainly in terms of what you put out. I mean, like you say, if you really want to have those private thoughts about, oh, what a low quality woman, then I guess that's cool. But I kind of think, yeah, you certainly don't want to externalize any of that kind of stuff. I mean, if you're going around like George Bruno and sort of like wagging your finger at these young harlots, you know, kind of thing, then you're just not gonna get the access that you would otherwise have.
Do you know what I love the most about this YouTube language filter? Is that everything has like that classic British sense of understatement now. Like, well, if you want to think that these are low quality women, and like all in my head, I can just picture like from a British standpoint, that's essentially calling a girl Hitler.
Yeah, exactly.
I know you've never been a fan of that like the understated British thing, but for me, I find that hilarious.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you've got to try. I was just talking to Rich Cooper about this actually, because you've got to try to. The thing about YouTube these days is that I'm saying that like I'm an old veteran, and of course I've only really had my channel for about a year. But you know, you've got to sort of you've got to signal what you want to say, but you can't go too far with it, because otherwise you run the risk of getting thrown off. And it's like
Would you say it's almost like calibrated charisma in your dating life?
Nice segue. Nice segue. Yes, it is absolutely like that. And if you want to find out more, then check out the link below.
But it's true though. That's the thing. I that's why I've kind of loved to embrace it, because it's teaching guys that you can't just be like blunt and direct and obtuse with these things. You kind of have to dance and play with the language and be more of a crafter of a story, and realize that there's some things you just don't say if you want to get a certain result. And I like it because it's like a second understanding through the content itself.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, I you know, to be honest, I quite like it this way anyway. I'm not particularly interested anymore in doing something incredibly crude and sort of, you know, kind of like
fart jokes. Not your thing.
No, not really. No. I know. But no, I don't like it. Even in terms of the dating stuff, I don't particularly want to be, you know. I quite like doing it trying to do it with a little bit more finesse, you know, in front of the paywall at least. Because that's just, you know, I just prefer it like that, really. Just be a little bit more sort of aesthetic about it somehow, you know.
Yeah, it's a scalpel as opposed to a cudgel or a machete. I could totally get behind that.
But I really like your book, because it's very sort of like, I mean, you talk about Bukowski, but it kind of it sort of put me in mind of Henry Miller a little bit as well.
Really?
Who's another guy I really like. I mean, I see them as almost not synonymous, because I think Henry Miller was a bit more pretentious than Bukowski, but it's still that kind of thing, isn't it? It's like guys writing unashamedly about their experiences with women and stuff, and it's really cool. You know, I'm really enjoying it.
Nice. I'm gonna have to add Henry Miller to my list. I keep forgetting that you're like, people may not know this about you, but you're a fairly educated writer. Like you have a master's or something in creative writing, or I heard something like this.
I've actually got a master's in creative writing, which will trigger all of the anti-college people, because it's like, why did you waste that? But yeah, I've got that. I've got a degree in English literature as well. So yeah, you know, I've always taken an interest in sort of literature and, you know, writing. But Henry Miller's really good. I mean, like Tropic of Cancer, Tropic of Capricorn, they're really great books. I mean, they're similar kinds of, like I say, he's slightly more pretentious than Bukowski, but it is essentially the same sort of thing. It's him writing about his sexual experiences. And I mean, this was a dude, this guy was hardcore, right? Because he had a family, I think, in the States. He was like doing some kind of corporate job or whatever. And he just,
so in other words, you got to go Gan here.
Well, he just jacked it all in to move to Paris and go and be a writer and go and have, you know, lots of sex. So he's pretty degenerate. Pretty degenerate, really. But
funny, yeah. Literature, I'm just starting to get into in the last couple of years now. But art, I've always been a huge fan of. And you've basically described Gauguin, the French painter, basically ditched his family and everything to go fool around with underage girls. And I think it was Haiti or Fiji.
Well, really?
That was like, the second half of his career was all just painting that stuff. He was the one that worked with Van Gogh, but Van Gogh ended up simping for hookers and cutting his ear off over it.
Yes. Would you recommend a guy cuts his ear off if he's
the equivalent of cutting your ear off now is just having screenshots of your convo sent to Tate. There's a subtle reference people might not get.
Exactly.
But I love that stuff. That's the thing. I miss when creative people weren't so soy. Do you know what I mean?
Well, I mean, there is a problem. There is clearly a problem with political correctness, isn't there, now, in terms of what you supposedly can and can't say,
Yeah.
And I just think it's a real shame because, I mean, some of that stuff was fantastic. And it's sort of like, I mean, when you think about the writer, I mean, as much as there was a very macho, masculine kind of image of the writer, wasn't there, in the early 20th century?
For the longest time.
Like the Hemingways, the Bukowskis, the Mailers, these kind of guys who were like tough guys, but they were also writers.
Yeah,
I suppose probably Henry Miller would fit into that as well. And that's all that's sort of gone away now in a large part because writing about the sort of stuff, I mean, the sort of stuff that we write about, I would imagine would be hard to get published by a mainstream publishing house these days, just because they would be like, well, it's
there's cussing in the title.
well, it's just not. They would probably see it as not being very politically correct or whatever. But it's like.
But that's the thing, though, is it? Because I was thinking about this. How many girls in college? And this is how I found out about Bukowski. It wasn't because I was a fan of his work. It's just because apparently college girls love to leave like his book on their coffee table to show how like edgy they were.
Yeah, they love it. They love it. Yeah.
Yeah, and then a lot of like the middle-aged Karens were complaining about this, saying if they actually read him, they would hate him. And I was like, oh, well, now if Karen hates it, I gotta go see. And that was how I got onto him. Literally from like a purple pill debate argument over, why we're wrong about this, that, and the other thing. Just having some of the people I can't stand hate an author, and I was like, I'll check them out.
Yeah. Well, a lot. I mean, but by the same token, there are a lot of girls do love that stuff as well. A lot of the more kind of fun, let's say, girls
quietly, discreetly, only when they go to that seedy bar that none of their friends would ever be caught dead in. For sure.
Yeah. So
I think that's one thing I'm gonna love about seeing guys coming out of your charisma course with their. I'm hoping they're gonna put like field reports or I guess testimonials online afterwards to say like how it's helped and why it's helped. I love seeing that stuff, and I'm picturing a guy that'll kind of start to enjoy the seedier side of charisma, just from like an aesthetic perspective. It's like, oh man, it's nice to be able to compartmentalize, like us jung it. Let's call it your shadow. Well, embrace your shadow. Is that what you're supposed to do? Embrace it.
I think. Well, yeah. I think. Well, no, actually, I mean, I actually think that there's something in that. Actually, as much as people, as much as we might take the mickey out of people who say that kind of thing, but actually, I think there is something in that, embracing your shadow for sure. But I mean, here's the thing, right? I mean, like I've always loved that sort of seedy side of life and everything. And I mean, to be fair, I don't really talk about that in the charisma course because it's a different sort of subject matter. But but aesthetically, I've always loved that kind of thing. And it seems like so many guys don't, though, do they? I mean, it seems like to talk about that kind of thing, you're on the back foot now because all of the talk now on Twitter is about like degeneracy and and all this kind of thing. And I'm just sort of like, well, I mean,
yeah, but is it though? That's the thing. How many times have you heard about a preacher going off about the purity of this? Now he hates degeneracy. And then 3 months later, there's a story about him getting blown in a bathroom of an airport by some dude named Stanley. I honestly think that the guys who are most against it are the ones that love it, but are just guilty about it. And I think getting rid of that guilt would go a long way into tempering it so it doesn't overtake your life. Because here's my example. This is going to be an edgy example. 9/11. Apparently, out of those 19 hijackers, a lot of them went to like the strip club the night before, or they used to like frequent strip clubs.
Really? Wow.
Yeah. And the theory, and I don't know if it's true because we can't ask them, heaven forbid, that they did all this stuff and they loved the degeneracy, but their religion kind of gave them that guilt complex for it. And this was their way of appeasing that guilt. I mean, they could have just done the Catholic thing, gone to confession, but instead they decided to rent some planes. So, and I know that's an extreme example, but part of me thinks like if guys were to embrace just a little bit of dark triad, just enough to like get it out of your system so you can go and be happy and healthy and functional, but without that fear of stepping over some arbitrary line about political correctness.
Well, I think, and I think there's a lot of hypocrisy. I mean, this is the thing that annoys me most about this our space, I suppose, and Twitter and all that kind of thing. Is that it just seems to me there's a lot of hypocrisy there.
Oh yeah,
with guys who want to portray a certain image, and it's kind of bollocks. If you could see inside their brains, would that be actually what they were thinking?
I can see in their DMs they're already hypocrisy.
Yeah, yeah. I tell you what, I did like though. Actually, I really like that. Have you read the book by Bronze Age Pervert? Yeah,
I've skimmed it. I got to give it another read now because at the time I was basically turned off by all that new age shamanism, like Evola, spirituality, philosophy guys. And so I
yeah.
kind of had him lumped with that at first. But, since kind of coming to terms with how he's talking about it, I've got to go give it another read. So,
Yeah, I actually really enjoyed that book because he's sort of like I mean, he's a pretty sort of alt right kind of guy, I suppose,
yeah.
or whatever. But I and I mean, he does go a little bit sort of what's that dude called? Jack Donovan. I think he goes a little bit in that direction of sort of like, oh, men should be bare chested and we should all be warriors and
the paganism thing,
sun and steel and all that kind of thing that he talks about. But actually, I mean, he's such a good writer. I actually found myself getting quite persuaded by it by the end. I was like, wow, this is awesome. Let's But
I think that's why I want to give him another thing on it because I was reading what's that guy's name, Roman McCluskey or
Macaulay, yeah,
Macaulay. I read his, and usually I'll buy the preview, and if I like it, I'll buy the rest of the book. His first chapter was essentially berating me and calling me an idiot, so I kind of got turned off by it. But I never got that.
Who Roman?
From Roman's book.
Oh yeah, I found that pretty dull. Like I said, to be honest.
But you're right. Bap never had that.
Yeah, but Bronze Age Pervert, I really liked. I found it really entertaining, and interestingly enough, actually, for somebody who's coming from a very right wing perspective, he actually says several times in the book, "I love going to those red light district areas in cities," and the reason he says it is because, well, he's probably a bit of a pervert, as the name would suggest, but also. He says he talks about owned spaces or something, and he basically what he's saying is kind of everywhere is kind of owned by the corporations, right? So everywhere you go, it's sort of sanitized, and probably Starbucks owns it, or if you're in New York, like Disney owns it, or blah blah blah. And he said the only places where you can get a sort of a sense of even a semblance of authentic life are these red light district areas. And so he would say, like, I would always go to the red light areas when, because it's there you can get a real sense of the actual life going on a little bit. I mean, it's probably still sanitized. It's probably still in some ways.
Yeah, but I know what he's talking about. I've seen it. That's why I actually love Airbnbs over hotels when I go to a different place because I love living on the economy as opposed to like that all-inclusive vibe.
Yeah, exactly.
Which I guess is a very bougie take on it, but whatever.
Yeah, and I was reading it and I was thinking, yeah, I agree because I've always felt like that myself, and it's kind of interesting to have somebody from a right wing perspective sort of saying that rather than saying, oh, degeneracy, we should all. But you see, the thing about him is he's not a trad in the sense that whereas you've got these trads who are like, oh, let's just make everything like it was in the 50s or whatever. He's much more, well, let's just burn it all to the ground. And and see what comes out the other side, sort of thing. And I sort of the anarchist in me quite likes that.
I was gonna say that sounds to me like actual nihilism. You kill your gods and then build new ones out of the ashes. That's the part that the Black Pillars kind of miss at the end, at least from existential nihilism, or I know there's the two types, but
I think he's not. Yeah, no, you're right. It's certainly not a depressing message. I mean, if you all of the stuff about let's all lift weights in the sun and carry spears and all that kind of stuff is sort of you could say it's a bit hokey, but there's a sort of there's a positive message there in a way because he's like, well, let's reclaim masculinity, let's burn the whole thing to the ground, and let's just start again with something new. And I mean, I don't know, I enjoyed it anyway. I thought it was a good book.
Yeah, it's good. Like I said, I'm putting it on. I'll probably bump it up the list now on your recommendation because I've learned you're pretty switched on. Should I start with him or should I start with what was the other one? Henry Miller.
I don't know. I mean, either way, really. I mean, obviously, he's a sort of a kind of niche self-published author. I mean, Henry Miller's a bit more of a like a classic writer. But I mean, either way, really.
Yeah, I don't really care about that stuff. But I will say the new Delicious Tacos book is going to be tops of my list before those ones. When's
it coming out?
I think it just came out last month.
Has it come out?
Yeah, it's got like a blue title with a bird on it. I haven't read it yet. He's what got me to start reading fiction again. The last one I read was a Choose Your Own Adventure in like the 90s.
He's really good. He's really good for sure.
But I love it. It's like that frustrated. It's like an incel meets a frustrated old man meets like Roosh on the decline, but like it adds a little romanticism to it. I love the whole thing. Like his last book where he talked about 4 days into the apocalypse, how It's only been 4 days and they're already having like sex slaves and guys. It's like Mad Max out there. It's like it's not even a week.
Yeah, that's what it's going to be like after Brexit next year.
Oh yeah. Should we talk a little bit about that? Because I'm curious about it, but it's hard to get information across the pond. Do you want to talk about that, or should we save that maybe and not do that?
Well, I mean, very, very briefly, it's already happened in the sense that Brexit, we've left the European Union. However,
and then nobody wanted to be responsible for how that happened, so they kept passing the buck along.
Yeah, but we're still effectively in the EU in the sense that we're still following all the rules and regulations. We're still paying in because we're in this year transition period. And what the government said, the transition's only going to, or is it the transition? The withdrawal. We're in the withdrawal period. And the government said, right, the withdrawal period is only going to last until the end of 2020. And then after that, we're trying to get a deal. But if we don't get a deal, it doesn't matter. We're out regardless.
So that's a hard date.
Well, Boris Johnson has put it as a hard date. So yeah, if they haven't got a deal by the end of 2020, then we're out. Without a deal? So that means all of our trade agreements go, and we've got no trade agreements with the EU or indeed the rest of the world because it's a lot of those go through the EU and all of this kind of stuff. So there's all of these complexities. But of course, what nobody expected was for coronavirus to kick off. So at the moment, you've got people saying, well, hang on, we've got to extend this withdrawal period now because you've got to be crazy if you think that like a year was, when you consider that it took Canada like 7 years to make a deal with the EU. It's crazy to think that we could have done it within a year because it's just so complicated.
But at the same time, you're technically on no deal now because nobody's moving anywhere.
We're still in because at the moment we're still following all of the rules and regulations, so we've still got the same market access and everything else like that.
Yeah, but everybody's quarantined, so nobody's moving things one border or another anyway, are they?
Well,
or are they? I don't know.
No, I don't know. I think stuff's still coming in, as far as I know. I mean, the supply chains are all right, but yeah. Anyway, so now people are saying, well, we need to extend this withdrawal period because, with coronavirus, we're never going to. It was a stretch that we would have got the negotiation done by the end of the year anyway, and now it's going to be thrown out of the water. And the government at the moment is saying no, it'll be by the end of the year. So the problem we're going to have is theoretically we could go into January after whatever damage is wrought by coronavirus, also having no trade agreements with anybody in the world, which is I suggest is going to be problematic. People will disagree, but no, it'll be fine.
There'll be some chaos around it, guaranteed.
I think it's going to be problematic, so it's going to be interesting to see what happens. But anyway, there we go. Let's see how it turns out.
But I mean, it's not like you gave the world a pandemic. The empire's damage has been done for a while now. China, if anything, kind of have that work. It's like going over to your buddy's house and then trashing the place the next morning, apologizing and asking for a ride to the airport. I think they're the ones that have to worry. But
it's a little bit of a faux pas, isn't it? It's a bit like going to somebody's house party and getting inebriated and then urinating on their couch. It's kind of like you might still be friends afterwards, but it's going to kind of be a bit strained for a while.
Keep throwing that in his face every time you go for drinks. Hey, remember that time you gave me a pandemic? Oh yeah. All right. Anyways, we're kind of rambling, so we'll end off on this one. I'll guys, the link's in the description here. I put it in there. It's up on the chat, gumroad.co/CAD Academy. If you're interested, check it out. We've been talking about it at length. Go see it on Rich's channel. Troy, take her away. Give us some shilling here and lead us out.
Absolutely. Well, thanks very much. So CAD Academy is currently open for enrollment, but it's only open for enrollment until Monday. So Monday night at midnight EST, the cart closes and then you can't get into the course. So if you do get in, you get the 10 hours of video content about game, dating, charisma, mindset. It's going to take you from chode to Chad. It's going to make you that desirable guy. So when you walk into the bar, you've got all eyes on you. You've got that sort of sense of power and choice, really, in terms of your dating. On top of the video course, you also get the 10 webinars, which we're going to be doing in a week or so. Plus, you get 3 of my books. Plus, you get access to my infill products. Plus, you get various other bits and pieces as well. All of that at the moment is $297 US dollars. However, after it's closed. Then, as and when I reopen later in the year, which I may do or may not, depending on how this goes, the price will go up because I'll be adding more bits to it. So if you want to get in at that low entry point, then now is the time to do it, because after it closes, if I reopen, the price will be going up. So yeah, get on board. That's the link on the screen. Come to my YouTube channel. You can find more information about it there. That's it, guys. Sign up before Monday, the 4th of May at midnight EST.